Okay, good evening, everybody. This is the meeting of the Master Plan Implementation Committee for November 4th, 2020. We have everybody present except one member who hopefully will be joining us if she gets out of work. But otherwise, we do have a quorum, and our agenda as usual, or our situation as usual, is we are still meeting via Zoom due to the governor's instructions and no in-person meetings and our ongoing situation with COVID. The meeting is being recorded for future use. And basically that's the sort of the intro here. Just very briefly, why don't we take a look at, I don't see any outside people looking to come in for any outside public comment. So let's just look briefly at the minutes from last meeting and see if I can share those. Hold on a second. They were very, very short and sweet. Or maybe not sweet, but they were short. No, we had kind of a somewhat of an aborted meeting. We were hoping to have Ken do this the other day, and then his schedule got a little bit crazy. Then we all got into kind of a pickle here with our timing. So that's why we're having this special meeting tonight. Why aren't you going to surface for me here? Hold on. I'm not seeing a way to scroll. There we go. There we go. So yeah, it was really very, very little business. We chatted about some things, but we were kind of holding place, waiting to see if we had everybody to come, and we didn't really. So this is the meetings we adjourned fairly quickly and made this meeting tonight instead. So I did not see any particular issues here. Would anybody make a motion to accept the minutes as written?
I move to accept the minutes.
Okay, could I have a second? I know Jim and Christina, you were out, so maybe Cindy, you have.
I'll second. Yep.
Okay, all right. All in favor?
Tishman, aye.
Palmer.
Okay, Fowles aye.
Palmer. Aye.
Yep.
See me abstain.
Okay.
Manson abstain.
Okay, that's fine. 3 approved, 2 abstain, and 1 absent. So I think we still have. Do we still have our quorum?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're
So
just
yeah,
missing. You mean
No,
if quorum to make the vote? I think it's fine because they just abstained versus pro or con. It doesn't
Right.
relate to the quorum, I don't think.
It's just kind of odd now that we're a 6-person entity. We're tied sort of 3 and 2 and 1.
Yeah, right.
But let's assume there was nothing earth shaking in these minutes, so I'm going to declare them approved. Okay, so our basic agenda for tonight is to go through with Ken the PowerPoint that he has developed for a presentation to select board, and it may be a select board planning board joint meeting. And we'll talk briefly, maybe just before we start, Ken, the choices would be November 17th, as I mentioned, or not until December 1st. So it depends on your schedule. So I can work with Ed to schedule that. And my thought had been that we should try to do a joint meeting with Plan because they are the ones that actually signed off on the original DLTA grant that we were given. So we can certainly invite them, and if anybody can show up, that would be great. And Cindy, I know you've got a meeting later tonight, so you can make that known personally as well. So Ken, just offhand, does the 17th look good for you or no?
Yeah, I worked with the other community and suggested that I don't need to be there.
Okay. All right, that's great. Then I will work on getting you scheduled for new business on the 17th and give you a vague idea of the time frame so you don't have to sit through probably the first half hour here, but we'll see how that works. Okay. And then just briefly before you start, everybody, you may not have seen it. I sent out, you may know, oops, hang on. I always do this the wrong way. Hold on. Come down. Nope, there it is. Can you all see this or not?
Nope.
No,
No. Okay, here we go. We'll get there eventually. Hit the buttons in the wrong order. We had
yes.
one of our, let's see. I'm gonna put this over here maybe. Well, anyway, we farmed out some of the cross tabbing to a guy named Dan Breen, who volunteered to kind of help us out a little bit and add to what Ken had already started. And I just sent these out this afternoon, so we won't really go through them, but he basically had tried to do some crosstabbing on some of the issues related to housing, related to the land use and zoning, and then sort of the priorities for how the town should evolve or what the future development should look like. And it was pages and pages of craziness to try and understand. And Ken did a great job here cleaning those up for us, and makes them certainly look more readable and more user-friendly. And this, in most cases, you'll see at the top were crosstabs by years lived in town. I think just about all of them were that way, rather than by age necessarily. So we tried to do things that way.
There was only one that you had by age.
There might have been one at the very end.
At the end,
Yeah, something here, yeah. But basically, yeah, toward the preference for growth, I guess that was. So these, you know, I don't know that we'll necessarily present. I think they will be annexes or whatever in the report itself, once we get that done. But I would see them as being particularly useful, I think, excuse me, for individual committees use, be that planning board, be that housing, be that possibly select board on a couple of things here as well. In addition to the main, you know, the main survey results themselves. But this gave us a little bit of notion of what a cross-tabbing exercise looked like. So hopefully this can be of use to individual committees that want to dive into this a little bit further at their own level. Okay.
And I think also for the public who hopefully will read the report, but it's a great visual.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just to look at, because you can see where the, you know, where the majority just by color.
Right. Now this I had not, well, we just got it obviously. So this is not yet up. And so there's a question. Would you like us to post this on the town website? We have the main, you know, the initial report, the initial results of the survey on the website. We could post this too if you think it would be useful.
Well, here's my thought. If I suspect you're going to present this, Ken, or some variation of this when you speak to the select board on the 17th of November.
I mean, maybe to an extent and very limited, because again, cross tabulation requires you to pull out a feature of the data that you want to really focus on. So do you want to focus and address strategies that either the select board or the planning board are going to want to explore in the next couple of months and years to implement the master plan on the basis of what one demographic has said or a couple of demographics have said.
Yeah.
That's the only thing with regards to cross tabulations and the way that we did this data, and you know, it may be insightful to understand how younger people or people that have not been in town as long think about these various priorities of either the select board or the planning board.
So having said that, then how will the ordinary viewer, then the non-involved individual who just happens to get onto the website and sees this, how will they find it useful? Will they find it helpful? Will they have too many questions? And I ask that because if it's not even going to be presented to, you know, fully to the select board, as you just said, or to the select board / planning board, then I'm just wondering, are we confusing people more than really?
Yeah, no, that's a possibility. Yeah, go ahead, Jim or Christina or anybody or Francine. Yeah,
I thought it was a good visual. Oh, I'm sorry, Francine.
No, go ahead, Chris.
Well, I was just saying that I found it kind of interesting. I think it's quick to read. And if it were put on the website, people could either study it or overlook it. I'm 6s on it. I do have a comment on the way it's laid out, but I'll say that at the end. And Francine, go ahead and make your comment.
Oh, I already did. I thought it was a good visual. It gives a lot of very, as you said, quick information, you know, at a glance, look at the question, look at the, you know, where the majority of the responses are just visually without
Yeah.
having to read a paragraph or, you know, you have to understand what the left hand means, the left hand column there. But other than that, it's, I think it's, I like it.
Mhm.
But again, I mean, you're giving the information in this same information in other ways. So,
I think what, you know, a suggestion could be is if you want to replace the report that you currently have on the website. And what I can do is just tack this on. I'm seeing some formatting issues. Fix the formatting, tack this onto that report, and just keep it on the website. And, you know, without much fanfare, it's there. Because what's going to end up happening is, I think that in the implementation chapter that, you know, we'll be preparing together, it's really not going to rely on some of this data. You know, this data, as I think I've mentioned in the past, I feel is good for the appendix and good for the study of the community survey. But the aggregate of the actual survey data is what you're going to want to, you know, say that a majority of the people in town support this idea and not, you know, newcomers or whatever.
Right. Yeah. No, I would tend to agree there, Ken. I see a couple of the formatting things you're talking about, just a couple of the orphan things that need to go with the actual graphs in a
That
couple
was what I was
places.
going to comment on. There are two, I believe.
Yeah, and then there was
other
one that was left justified.
right there. Yeah. Well, there's one right here, a big one that needs to jump down. So yeah, no, that would be good. And like I say, the one right now is on the homepage, the main survey itself. So we could just, well, yeah, I think we could just add this to it somehow.
I mean, what I can do is basically take the one, I have the file that I gave you, and then just add this to the end of it.
And then sort of replace the one that's on the website.
And then you ask Ed to just replace the file.
Well, that might work. Yeah. Okay. Jim, we lost you. I didn't know if you had any comments before I get out of this. But I'll stop sharing. Okay. All right. So we can take a look at that idea. I think if anything, okay, Jim, you're back. Sorry, I lost you there for a minute.
Yeah, I'm here. I just turned my camera off for a second.
Okay. Did you have any thoughts about that?
No, I just to move things along, I'll just say I concur with what's said. I think it can be added to what's out there.
Okay.
I don't believe it requires any additional explanation.
Okay.
It's a nice visual.
Sounds good. All right. So Ken, let's turn it over to you in terms of the PowerPoint itself, in terms of what you think you would like to present to Select Board, and then we'll let you run with it.
Yeah, so I believe Chris may have shared this with you previously. You still see, the thing I don't like is when I press escape, because now I'm forced to see it in a full screen. I can't look at my notes. So luckily I have a couple of notes. Okay, so yeah, Chris should have shared this possibly based on what I shared with you all prior to prior to the meeting I was supposed to appear at, which I believe was last week.
It would have been a couple of weeks ago now, so probably nobody's really looked at it, honestly.
Okay. So I think as you may have seen this before, there were some revisions, but this is intended to supplement or it complement what's going to be a future product by the end of the year. Good evening. I guess I'm just going to practice. Good evening, Select Board. This is a presentation by the Master Plan Implementation Committee, and my name is Ken Comey. I'm with the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, and with the Master Plan Implementation Committee, we are looking at updating the implementation element of the town's master plan. And we're going to go through a couple of slides to show some of the progress that the committee has made over the past year. and a half. The implementation committee is charged with certain aspects of implementing the master plan, which was adopted in 2012. And it has since reconvened, I think, in late 2018 to identify where to go with some of the goals and strategies that the town has adopted as ideas to move the town forward. So work to date is the DLTA project, of which PVPC is contracted to do this work with the committee. The DLTA project basically was to look at the work that MPIC has done over the past year and a half, specifically in the time prior to me starting with the community in late January. MPIC had done an analysis and update of create basically a status report for some of the goals and strategies that the town adopted in its 2012 plan. And my work with the committee has been to kind of guide the town and update the implementation element to ensure that the town had the know-how and the resources on how to implement some of those goals and strategies, and identify areas where priorities may have changed over time. So that's an important thing too, with regards to the actions of the select board and of the town moving forward. So work to date, as I mentioned, a review of the existing goals and strategies. That's what MPIC had done with regards to the 9 elements of the master plan that is usually designated by Mass General Law. If a town decides to do one, addressing land use, open space and recreation, economic development, housing, transportation, public facilities, among other things. It has been having ongoing meetings, of which in the past year, due to the pandemic, we've been meeting virtually. The select board and the planning board had a joint meeting earlier in the year to identify some priorities that the select board had been examining in the time previous to this project. And we've done a community survey, of which I'm sure the town had been aware of through the advertising of the committee and by members of the committee and fellow residents, as we had a PSA and that went around town. Some of the work to follow, and this is going to be through the month of November and December, as this project will end by the end of the year, is prioritizing those goals and strategies that have been identified by the committee and understanding them, and preparing an update to that implementation chapter. So let's go to the community survey data and some of the findings. The survey period was from June 26th through September 8th of this year. We had 896 respondents. And some of the questions that we posed in the survey were length of residency, homeowner, renter, or household members, gender identity, age range, and description of household. And from this data, we were able to identify who was responding to these surveys and who within town some of these policies, general town growth and town priorities were affecting. So one of the questions is, how do you believe Southampton should evolve by 2040? And this is a question that we usually ask in a master planning setting. And back in 2012, this was asked. And I think part of this implementation program that the MPIC has been trying to move forward with is specific to understanding the residents of today. And so a third of the residents responded with that they like the way Southampton is today and want to see that by 2040, with 29%, almost 29% looking at Southampton providing some additional housing options, balancing commercial and residential growth, understanding that there is a sentiment of protecting agriculture and open space. So I think knowing that and kind of having worked with the town in various capacities over the past year, this is very reflective of your resident body in Southampton and how they feel it should be looking at growth in the next couple of years. With regards to housing, a majority, more than 3/4, feel that there are sufficient housing options for themselves and their families in Southampton. And so, I think that this could be and reflective of some of the ideas of the types of housing that the town is providing or is permitting in town. With regards to that, if you were to move to another living situation within Southampton someday, what type of housing do you anticipate would meet your future needs? Again, of these, a majority either are saying that they don't anticipate requiring a housing situation and owning a house, which a majority of the respondents have said that they were homeowners. So this is reflective of today and the anticipation of a couple of years out that that's going to be the case as well. But I think, it's probably good to note that there is some underlying responses here with regards to senior living in a 55+ independent community, and having those housing provisions that the town has identified within its master plan and its some community documents. But I think it's good to just reinforce that idea and knowing that. And I think going along with that is that in addition to that, understanding that probably in those 55+ independent communities, you're going to have dwelling units that are with everything on one floor. So I think understanding that those two ideas seem to go together. On a scale of 1 to 5, I would like to see the town provide affordable and accessible housing options by promoting development of. And I would suggest that in this, the town is not looking to densify in any means, in any way, specifically with regards to adding apartment buildings to the various housing options you have in town or converting single families to multifamily housing units. There are abilities through the zoning that allow for that, but it's suggested here that the majority of the respondents, or not a majority, but a good chunk of the respondents strongly oppose apartment buildings and converting single family to multifamily housing. The detached single family homes that currently exist and are probably par of the course for the town with regards to the housing development that does exist. It seems like that is a sentiment that's shared by much of the community with regards to ensuring that if there's an affordability that can be made on those types of units, that's what the town should be promoting. And that's specific to single family homes. Community priorities. And so I think this may be of interest to the select board with regards to some of the ideas that MPIC had identified and are asking and have asked in this survey. And I know have been identified in the community priorities that was shared with me earlier in the year. And it's, so this shows two things. Question 19 was another on a scale of 1 to 5, indicate your level of support for each of the following strategies. We have a menu of items on that side. And then 20 asked you to prioritize, and respondents could drag or put 5 of their the top 5 priorities of that. So with regards to the left-hand screen, which I think for you should be the left-hand screen, a majority for developing internet broadband service, generating revenue for the town. I think that is very clear within the support or strongly support that a majority really want that to happen. And it's clear with regards to 20 that that's one of the top 5 priorities that the town should be focusing on. I think it's important to note that, you know, these community priorities and this community survey is meant to inform the implementation chapter and the master plan in general. However, you know, there are certain things that I think we have found through the survey and through responses within the survey that you know, may either push strategies that have been identified in the 2012 plan up or down, or, you know, maybe put that in the back pocket for the town to address later in the future. But it's important to note that, you know, the improving internet is one of the top 5, but the top one is acquiring land and completing the bike path from Sheldon's to the Easthampton line. And you can see in question 19 that a majority of the respondents chose that they strongly support that idea, with 3/4 supporting or strongly supporting that. Also in the top 5, purchase land to preserve open space, pursuing renewable energy at generation, and looking at solar on town-owned land, and developing bicycle paths and greenways that link open spaces and neighborhoods. So these are things that you may have identified in community documents, and having worked with the town on the open space and recreation plan, and at least drafting that, that's, you know, that seems to be really hit home with regards to this survey. And that helped inform, you know, some of the goals and strategies of that open space plan. I mean, it's very apparent here. But, you know, I think it's good to note for the select board and in identifying things that they should be pursuing, that there's this community survey. It is but one tool that you can rely on, but the master plan implementation update will assist the select board and the town moving forward. With regards to land use, which are more in the vein of regulations that the planning board or conservation commission may want to take, you know, as they update regulations and bylaws and whatnot. You know, I think it's 50.8% of the respondents found, or 50.8% of the respondents found that they thought that the bylaws were in good shape. The zoning bylaws didn't really need any changes. I think with this said too, you know, I think it hits home with regards to the allowing higher density housing types. That's typical, and that corresponds with some of the data that was found in the housing section. You know, limiting development to the capacity of town's water supply, and limiting development to understand that there are other ways to coordinate both your built environment and your protected spaces, which I think continuing to educate landowners about options for protecting land through your APR program, and understanding that there is some sort of connection to that with regards to that development versus preservation of those. Yeah, I think that, as I mentioned, you know, the community survey helps inform the implementation chapter, and it helps the master plan implementation committee, the select board, and the planning board, and other authorities that were identified in the original plan help move forward and help move the town forward based on some of the ideas that exist there. I think what will end up happening by the end of the year is a clearer picture on what resources exist for the various authorities to help assist, what types of funding opportunities are there, and some mechanisms within state government that that the town can participate in order to get some of these priorities achieved. But that's it. I think the understanding that the Master Plan Implementation Committee will be meeting maybe 1 or 2 more times prior to the end of the year to work on this chapter that will be available for the public to review and for the planning board to adopt at a future date. And at this point, I'd take any questions.
Great. Thanks, Ken. That's almost 20 minutes. So that's a good synopsis. So any thoughts and comments of what you've heard there?
I think the biggest thing is what you want to focus on.
Yep.
You know, I think if there are certain aspects of the presentation that you want to focus on, that's probably important for me to know, so that I can, you know, provide some context there.
Okay. Yep. Cindy, go ahead.
A couple real quick things. It occurred to me that we were calling that survey the community engagement survey. I don't know how critical that is, but that's just one thing. Secondly, I didn't hear you mention something that absolutely impacted the way we did things this year, and that's the pandemic. And you know how we initially had hoped to have more of a in-person kind of engagement with the residents, and that wasn't possible. I just wonder if you just want to make some reference to that, because ideally we would have had that. We would have had a give and take of some sort.
Sure.
As part of it. That's the
great.
second thing. And the third thing is to ask if what we're recommending as next steps. Would that be then? I mean, I'm thinking we propose next steps and let them chew on it versus not propose them and expect the planning board and the select board or whatever to come up with the next steps. That's just my thought. I think they're looking to us to come up with the recommendation for next steps.
Well, I think to respond to that, I think that the next step is finalizing what this implementation chapter is going to look like, right? So I guess, you know, maybe addressing in the first part of the presentation, what the goal of this DLTA project is to accomplish. I think that at the very least, unless you have a different idea of how you'd want to approach that.
I just want to put some context around it, which could include talking about the goal of the DLTA, the way it was originally written, and discussed with the select board and you and others. And the fact that we in this meeting have had chats about what's next, where are we going, how long? And I think the statement was used, we're not going to do the implementation. We're going to be supporting the facilitation by the specific boards and committees that will be more appropriate. I wonder if that's helpful to come out in the presentation.
I think it's a good reminder of what the Master Plan Implementation Committee is meant to do.
Yep.
And having been part of your conversation with regards to that, to understand that it's not this committee that's going to be doing all this implementing.
Yeah.
It's this committee that's going to be addressing and helping find a thread of which to assist the planning board or the open space committee or the select board on
Or housing
or housing.
Open.
The various authorities that you've identified in the plan that would be responsible for those specific strategies.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think it's a great reminder to put in there of,
Yeah,
you know,
that's my
what that relationship is
Mhm.
in
Okay.
town government.
And
Francine?
can I just ask a question? Is there any need to have a buy-in by these responsible entities? I mean, how do we get, I mean, we've kind of put this plan together based on information that we've gotten from residents of the town. But whether or not that happens will be based on,
Yep.
you know, the buy-in of those specific committees.
I mean, that's important. And I'm sure that may be a question. I think the way that, and this is through kind of understanding your committee, the committee was put together in a way that a member of each of those authorities would belong to this committee.
Right.
Knowing that you have some gaps in membership,
Mhm.
that's something. There's going to be a need to have a conversation with those other groups in some form or fashion, either re-inviting them to the process, but also identifying that whether or not they had participated now, they were identified back in 2012. So there may have been some engagement back then that committee was responsive and responsible for implementing, you know, some of the ideas that were established back then.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
for me, that should occur sooner rather than later.
Mhm.
I mean, I think it may be, you know, word of mouth and having the committee reach out to those authorities or those committee members, you know, as it is a select board meeting, maybe making it a select board / joint planning
Mhm.
board, just for this presentation alone, having those members or a selection of
Yep.
members from those committees also
Yep.
just attend the
Yep.
special presentation.
Well, and should we further make it joint with housing as well, Jim?
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, we could make it a,
Absolutely.
you know, in
Absolutely.
terms of, you know, making it a real joint meeting with the three principals, not to ignore other committees, but those are the main actors maybe that are being identified here. I don't know.
Right. Well, to me, there's, I think to Francine's point, there's a couple of things. There's notification to the committees to kind of confirm, do you see this information? This is what we're recommending as the MPIC, and we're recommending it based on this survey of the townspeople. And then there's follow-up.
Yeah.
So, you know, so we plan this notification, we have this joint, it's a large meeting, probably easier with Zoom now. But then maybe there should be check-ins coming, I would say, honestly, from the select board saying, okay, this is what we discussed on, you know, December, whatever. And here we are in June, Housing Authority. What of these recommendations are you able to follow up on? In other words, some kind of accountability beyond just the notification.
Yeah.
And the only place I can think that real accountability comes from, it could come from MPIC, I suppose. But, well, I guess who really has any authority in an all volunteer town, but it might have more muscle if it comes from the select board.
Okay.
I agree with you, Jim. I do think that maybe setting some guidelines. I mean, this is the implementation committee, but those committees will be charged with actually driving this and then asking them perhaps for their individual implementation plan or time schedule or something, so that, you know, periodically we can check in and measure progress, because just looking in hindsight, from that original master plan and the implementation, it was very hard to see and track if anything happened. And I'm sure it did. It just was never recorded anywhere, reported back. I mean, it's kind of, and with people coming in and leaving volunteer boards, this kind of tracking system is more important than ever.
Yeah, that's true.
Right,
Okay.
we run the risk of repeating what happened several years ago, the initial, that
Yeah.
Right.
maybe
Yeah,
some things were done, but we don't know. And,
Yeah.
you know, we got a great response from this survey.
Mhm.
We're really, if we want to gain trust from the townsfolk, that when we ask them what to do and they tell us, we actually do things.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No, I think
You have to follow up. You have
Yeah.
to follow up, or we're spinning our
Absolutely.
wheels.
absolutely. The follow-up is really critical. I mean, we did have, I think that 896 we figured out was about a 20% response return rate on our 4,000 some voters or registered voters or something like that. So that's better than we would have even expected. Christina, some quick thoughts, anything?
Well, I just want to say that as you think about including other committees, certainly with the importance given to saving open space, I think Concom should be invited to the select, if you're going to make it a joint meeting.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out, I mean, it could be joint for everybody. I don't know, that may be a bit unwieldy. I don't know how to do that for this first time around.
Well, neither
here, but-
do I, but they've been charged. I mean, the overall, you wanted to include housing, and I agree with that. I agree with all of this, but they also have quite a task at hand with such import given to those questions about preserving open space. It's just a comment.
Mhm.
I think maybe a suggestion is working through this draft plan. And then maybe in the new year or by the end of the year, have an all boards meeting of where this is the agenda. It's maybe an hour and a half of talking about the master plan, rather than 25 minutes with the select board. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen that done in a municipal setting where you have a major project or you're trying to draw attention to a project. And even in the new year, I can probably find some time to, even though I won't have any, even though I'm nearing the end of my entire budget for this project, I can find some time one evening to maybe talk through what the product looks like with people that you would invite that would be charged with moving forward with some of these policies.
Okay.
And I mean, does it make sense? It may not be that one size fits all, but kind of putting a structure together that people could follow. Do you know what I'm saying? Of how to get from where to address the priorities that the town has set. I don't know if I'm making any sense. You know, either check-in times or I don't know, just some kind of tool that would help them plan out what their next steps need to be, or just leave it to them.
I mean, like a template of action, an action template
Yeah,
that everybody
something-
could follow.
Something to that effect.
Well, that could be part of the product. I think that I may have access to, or I've seen in the past, some sort of template for, you know, whether or not it's adhered to over time, that's another thing.
Yes.
But at least because the momentum is there from a completed process, that, you know, there'll be some awareness of that.
Okay.
That definitely could be produced with what the end product's going to look like.
I think I love Francine's suggestion, and if you can have anything that's accessible, easy for you to put in the proposition to adopt or not, otherwise it's going to flounder. It's probably going to flounder.
I understand. That's
Yeah.
that's I mean, even in my own community, it's what I have to do an open space thing tomorrow, And I've responded to the survey, but understanding some of the various things that are happening in city government in Easthampton, it's, you know, there are those gaps too. And the momentum of trying to enact some of these strategies have just been either ignored or, you know, just it hasn't had the interest.
Yeah, I think there's got to be some sort of a blueprint or something for people to buy into with some, you know, set times and whatever, and to be, you know, holding the various committees accountable. Otherwise, we really won't have made this a real actionable plan, I think. So I think that's really still the overarching goal. Just two quick things. You mentioned a couple of times the 2012 plan. Is it 2012 or 2013?
That's a
Team.
good question. Is it 13?
It
think
is
it's
Isn't the
13.
open space 13?
Yes, it was,
Space was 13,
I
so
think it's
that's-
13.
Both the open space and master plan?
oh, no, the open space was 12, I think, right, Cindy?
Okay, that's what
Yes.
I'm getting.
So master plan is 13. Okay.
I'm gonna have to look it up,
Yeah.
everybody.
No, I'm pretty sure it's 13. And then, don't bother, Cindy. I think we're right. And then just two things on the last slide. The one thing that you might want to also bring to people's attention is that notion on cluster development. If I remember that last slide, the approve and strongly approve, that was like the next second or third good priority or like on that. We might want to draw some attention to that. I don't know. And then I didn't know. Yeah, just take a look at that. That was the very last slide, I think.
Yeah, so this is the land use slide.
So the cluster development was 20, no, was that the one? Or sorry, maybe not that one. I'm sorry. No, it was the lower density. Sorry. It was the 31 and 25%.
Oh, okay.
Or lower density housing.
Yeah, that seemed to be it's a little bit hard for people to look at this the first time and sort of pick out what these different colors mean.
Yeah,
So we might have to just sort of help them see this. I mean, you drew their attention to the 50% on the first one, but you know, as we talked about, I'm not too sure how many people really are familiar with what our zoning laws are anyway. And for lack of anything better, they probably just put neutral because it, you know, I guess I don't put a lot of stock into that answer
okay.
because I'm not sure whether people knew enough to really answer it well. But so I'd like to pull out a couple of other ones that seem to be, you know, approve and strongly approve, if you could.
Okay.
And then I didn't know, even though the housing, I'm satisfied with my housing, had only like, I forget, 18% or something like that. If I'm not satisfied with my housing, I'm wondering if we should put in a slide just to reflect what people aren't satisfied with, because otherwise you could look at that and say, well, everybody's satisfied with their housing, so we don't have anything to worry about. And that's not true.
Okay.
Well,
Oh,
it's not true, to your point, Chris, is that, you know, if you ask everybody who's in an exclusive club, who's in the country club, if they're
Yeah.
happy about being in the country club, of course they're going to say, I'm happy about being in the country club.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that the country club has availability for everyone to enter.
Right.
So it's going to have a skewed answer.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Christina?
I agree with that. Those people who are living here, of course, are satisfied, but a lot of people are excluded from living here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they didn't have the opportunity to answer.
Right. Right. And then a lot of people that did, you know, there weren't that, you know, that big a percentage, but those that did take the time to say why they were dissatisfied,
Right.
you know, they brought up the cost issue. They brought up the size issue. I mean, I think we need to bring that out. I mean, I think that's, you know, even for those that are living here, that
Right.
they couldn't afford to downsize and stay here. They're going to have to leave town, or they can only stay here because they're living with their kids or whatever, you know. So I would like to see that maybe as an extra slide or a half a slide, something put in there.
Yeah, no, that's doable. It's
be
the
my
following
only-
question, or it's the next question in that series of questions regarding housing was,
Yeah.
why are you not satisfied?
So that's all I had. So I think that looks good. I think we're running up on everybody's time here. So just to recap, I just want to be sure in terms of the joint meeting I'm asking for, is it just select board and planning board now? And then we'll do a bigger more inclusive meeting later on with other committees. I mean, certainly, you can spread the word and people from your various committees can attend should they want to. They can always just zoom in as members of the public, but to make it a joint meeting, I think it's simpler right now to be planning and select board the way we started and then branch out into other committees. That would be my preference, but is
I agree.
everybody okay with that idea? Or
I agree.
Yeah, I think as the two lead, well, especially planning, we all
Yeah.
need to be on the same page before we take it on the road, so to speak.
okay.
Agreed.
Okay,
Agreed.
fine. All right, so be it. So with that in mind, we have no other agenda. If anybody has any thoughts or questions before we might want to adjourn here.
So we aren't rescheduling another meeting because the only meeting we have ahead of us is the 17th of November.
For right now, we'll keep it for the
Okay.
17th and nothing else right now. I think we'll
Okay.
see how that goes. And, we may want to pick up something in early December would be my thought, before the holidays, do one meeting in December at some point.
Okay,
My thought, but we'll try to keep these meetings not as frequent certainly as they were before. And I think our workload is changing right around now. So I think we need to get a reaction of how the meeting goes on the 17th, and that may give us a marching plan too. You never know.
Yeah.
Okay,
okay.
all
Good.
right. No other discussion, any other things, any thoughts? If not,
I move to adjourn.
all right,
I'll
I'll
s-
second.
a second. Okay, could I have a roll call vote, please?
Hummer, yes.
Tishman, I.
Feeny eye.
Fowles eye. Christina? Yep.
Oh, I already did. I'm sorry.
Okay,
Yes,
that's
I, Mattson, I.
Okay, very good. Okay, we will call this meeting adjourned at 6:57. And thank you very much, Ken, and I appreciate your time and running in between meetings, but you've done a yeoman's share of work here on putting all this together for us. So thanks for all your time and effort. Really
Thanks, Ken.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Ken.
Thanks, everybody,
Thanks,
for
Ken.
coming. All right. All right. Stay patient, everybody.
Good night, all.
Night
Oh,
all.
yeah. Can you believe
Eh.
it? Good night.
Night.